Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. We have Wendy Levra on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Nevada, where, I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but I bet it's better here in Minnesota, but we'll get into that in about 10 seconds. But she's a personal trainer as well as a national level NPC competitor. Most importantly, she's our current guest. Wendy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I got to ask, first of all, the big elephant in the room, what's the weather like in Nevada today?
It's actually kind of chilly. Like the weather starts out like winter in the morning, and then it's like fall, and then it's summer, like really hot in the afternoon, and then it goes back to like winter. So you have to layer up.
I just find it so fascinating because people give me crap about living in Minnesota when it gets to be like negative 20, which I can understand, but I could never live in a climate that hot. Like I had a friend that moved to Arizona and he's like, yeah, I just can't stand the 110-degree days. And I was like, you're not going to get an ounce of sympathy from me because you chose that. But how do you deal with that, especially like during the summer when it gets to be like 110? Is it like a lot of people that I hear of where like if you're going to do anything outside, you basically have to do it in the first couple of hours of the day?
So I'm actually in the northern part of Nevada. I did used to live in southern where it was really hot like that, but I live in northern, so it's a little more mountainous desert. So it still gets like 100, 105. So it's still pretty hot, but not as bad. So we can still go outdoors and, enjoy ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, well, at least you have that. But before I get into our weather woes, because like I say this every time on the podcast, and for anyone out there saying, "Oh, you mentioned it too many times," I am working on still my winter weather podcast, where I'm just going to be. It's like 10 hours long of me just telling the worst winter weather stories imaginable of what I've experienced living up here. But I don't want to get everyone so depressed before that. But before we get into that, Wendy, why don't you give us your backstory and what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape, and how that led to where you're at right now?
Honestly, when I was a lot younger, like in high school, I never had any self confidence. I couldn't make friends real well. I mean, I got along with people okay, but I was bullied a little bit and kind of dealt with an eating disorder. And then as I got older, I had kids and I kind of got chunky. I lifted a little bit, but I was able to eat like a jerk and never really gain anything then because I kind of got some help with the eating disorder. Back up a little bit. Anyway, so I had kids and then I gained a little bit of weight. So I hired a trainer and I had an athletic build already. So she was like, you should compete. And that made me feel really good. So I'd never even really thought about competing. So I went home and told my husband at the time that she said that, and he kind of laughed. And I have this like all or nothing personality, and don't ever tell me like I can't do anything. And I don't think he meant it, like I couldn't do it. I just think he didn't know what to say. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. So I'm going to show you. So I just went for it and hired a coach and started competing.
Did you have any reservations before about competing, or were you automatically just all in, or did you have to do your background research on the sport?
Um, I started looking into it and I was a little bit scared because what I saw were all these pros that were like shredded. And at the amateur level, I mean, you don't really have to look like that, but you want to. And I didn't look like that at all. I don't think I took it as serious as I should have. I kind of didn't do my cardio as hard that first show. So then the next one, I took it a lot more serious. I was like, I'm gonna go pro. So, you know.
What was that first prep like? Because so many people tell us, it's usually the easiest when it comes to your career wise, just because it's your first step in it. But just that mindset that you need to have when you go on a prep of just everything just becomes so specific and you just really get locked into a new mindset. What was that first prep like for you when you first took you do your first little dip in the pool?
That first prep, honestly, like when I walked out on stage, everything, I wasn't even nervous really. I was just like, yeah, I'm so cool. I was like, I look so good. Like I really felt like that was the best I ever looked in my life. So I mean, and yeah, at the time it was, but I really wasn't that shredded. So, I didn't do as good as I would like to have done, but I felt good about it. I was fine with it. It was my first time. So, and there was only like 3 girls in my class, and I placed second. So, woo,
Hey, you beat one. Okay, hey, you got
yes.
hey, hey, and that's just great. But one question that I love to ask everyone also that's on the podcast for health and fitness is that if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, I mean, their nutrition, their diet, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to that overall package that people end up seeing. What was that experience like for you, sort of figuring out what worked best for your body? Because, I mean, if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what'd you train for that body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you.
Yeah. So it was trial and error. When I first started, I did a little bit of volume training with my trainer, and then I went to my competition coach at the time, the first one, and she had me doing powerlifting. But it did actually help me build a lot of muscle. So through that prep, I did powerlifting, but my legs got really big, but not my back. So I was really imbalanced. So then after that, I just kind of did whatever I wanted for a couple of years, but I did put on some muscle. I just did some volume training again, and then started working on my back a lot because I want, a lot of pull ups, dumbbell rows. Like those are the big thing. Just working to failure, whether you're doing low reps or high reps, it doesn't matter as long as you're working to failure. So that's what I did. And now I'm just balanced. So
Well, hey, you're the exact opposite of me, where my back was one thing that really, really shot up because I had jobs all throughout college of loading boxes into trucks and warehouses. So you either got a really nice back, you quit. But also being 6'3", I mean, my legs and my lower body are just absolutely shot, where I could train them into oblivion. And I always said I could inject pure muscle into my legs and they wouldn't gain an ounce. I mean, I don't understand how that's physically possible, but they would find a way to do it. But other than your legs and your back, what was one body part that really, really took off when you started training, and then one body part that really lagged behind that you had to really like catch up and train vigorously?
my back still did lag a little bit, and my shoulders. I mean, they're not where I want them to be still. My triceps took off, like they're huge. So I have like these horseshoe triceps. My quads took off, but my hamstrings and glutes, I've really had to work on. My glutes this last improvement season really grew. So the first competition last year, I like completely lost my butt, but this one this year it stayed, so that was nice. But my hamstrings are still lagging, so that's something I'm really going to be working on this year.
Which I love that you brought up triceps, because people don't mention that, if you want to have good arms, which I mean, every guy that I know wants to, and a lot of women do, triceps are the number one thing. I mean, it's 75% of basically of the size of your arm. So I always said you could have crappy buys and really good tries. And, tries are one thing that you don't even need to flex and they look good. So like you could just be walking around and people are like, oh, that guy looks awesome. When you could have, actually crappy arms. But yeah, that's great that you said that, because I mean, and that's why I love asking that question, because so many people have so many different answers that it really does show that, everyone is different, especially in this day and age of, Instagram, where everyone's always comparing themselves to others and saying, oh my God, I want his arms. I want her abs. I want their back. And just, you can only be the best version of themselves. But what was your experience like with the nutritional changes that you had to make? Because I always say with nutrition, 90% of the lifestyle, or of the changes that you're going to get, and the lifestyle, is nutrition. What were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you first got started working out?
First of all, consistency. Because before I would eat like what I thought was healthy throughout the week, and then on the weekends I just go eat whatever, pizza, burgers. So being consistent with your diet, I had started doing macro dieting. So I had a set amount of carbs, a set amount of fat, a set amount of protein, and I ate that amount every single day. And, most of the time it was pretty healthy, but I would have a little treat now and then, and it worked for me. That was what I first started doing. And I still do macros, but now I eat really clean. So,
I mean, it's always ever evolving too, just like everything in this lifestyle where you're never going to find, exactly what works best for you and be able to maintain it for a while because your body's always changing and adapting. So, I mean, with people my age, I always say this is the sport that you don't want to get into because you're not going to get the results yesterday, which I mean, everyone in my generation wants. It's like, oh yeah, I want the Amazon Prime it. I want it yesterday. But so this is really, this is why I love to talk about this sport on the podcast, because it's definitely a sport that requires dedication and hard work that a lot of people just don't have this day and age anymore. But another thing that I think isn't discussed about the sport that I really think should be is the mental change that occurs during the sport. I mean, we talk so much about the physical changes, and because that's the one thing that's visible to the human eye, but the mental change that occurs when you become a bodybuilder is, I think, so much more powerful than the physical change. But it's not aware. People aren't that familiar with it. But what was that mental change like for you? That mindset that you get once you started training, and how has it benefited you in your day to day life?
Oh, I have so much more confidence in myself normally. I should say normally. I feel good about my body. I'm not embarrassed to, put on a pair of shorts or a tank top or whatever. And I feel confident internally. So I know I can go out and do anything I put my mind to. Because if I can go no carbs for 2 months and no fat and train like, a beast, on top of that and feel like I'm dying, then I know I can do anything I put my mind to. But I will say, too, it causes also a little bit of body dysmorphia because you're never good enough. You're never satisfied. But I think that's a good thing because it kind of pushes you, you're constantly trying to improve. So,
I was gonna say, if you ever said that you were ever self-conscious looking the way that you look right now of putting on like a tank top or something like that, I would say you have some serious issues. Because yeah, if you say right now, oh, I feel too, but that's another thing that with people that aren't in bodybuilding don't understand is that, yeah, like I've suffered from body dysmorphia too. I even asked my friends, like when I was a lot bigger in college, because I've lost a little bit of it because with this podcast and my job and all the other responsibilities that I have. But I used to go up to people and say, hey, do I look good enough or what? And then they're like, dude, are you kidding me? So it's that's definitely one thing that needs to be talked about a lot more of, that people just assume that it's just not that something that's like, oh, once I look that great, I'm going to feel amazing, 24/7. No, it's not that. You
yeah.
might not even feel as good at all, because so many people have that idea that if I look good, then I'm going to feel good then. And, that might work for 1% of the population who are just that narcissistic, but it's like, no, that doesn't normally work at all. But a myth and stereotype that I love to bust on this podcast, and we discussed it briefly before I started recording, is that, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there are still so many people that have that myth that if they walk into the gym and they pick up one weight, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And, like I've told everyone, I'd spend my entire life savings to train with them. I mean, I would literally move mountains just to even talk to them then, because they have found so many of the secrets that I'm looking for. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started working out? And even if you didn't, I bet you hear that all the time being a personal trainer. How do you like to respond to that?
Oh, it drives me nuts, honestly. And I use Arnold's saying, you never will look like me because you don't.
And
And I
again,
know
and
that
again, and
sounds
again, if you do end up
narcissistic,
looking
but
like her, give me a call again if that happens. if you go into
it
the
just
gym for
drives
if
me
you go into
nuts.
if you go into the gym for one day and come out looking like Alicia Young or something like that, give me a call because I want to know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it were that easy, but I get that all the time, and people think it's okay too to say, "Well, I don't want to look like you," or they'll be like, "Well, my husband is afraid that I'm going to look like you," or you know, they think it's gross or whatever. And just like, it's okay to fit shame, but not okay to shame somebody else for the way they look.
I've always thought that that's one of the weirdest things in our society is that, if you were to make fun of an obese person, you get torn apart by people basically. But if you make fun of someone for being too much in shape, then everyone's like, oh yeah, that's, whatever. They're just, they don't really care. I mean, some people might be like, hey,
Yeah,
that's
we don't
disrespectful,
have
but
feelings.
yeah, we don't really have feelings and stuff like that. So people just assume that, and a lot of people that don't care about that are the people that like just assume that if you look good, you have no problems at all. And so it's like those friends that I know, they're always like, oh, if you're like a supermodel girl or whatever, you have no problems at all in your life because everything gets handed to you. We're just like, no, that's not the case. So it's a lot of stuff like that, I think, as well. But And I mean, yeah, just another thing that impacts women so much more than men is that confidence boost, which I love to promote on this podcast too, because so many people don't understand that that's the biggest thing that you can take from the gym is that overall confidence boost. So that's very, very important as well. But one thing that I never was familiar with, or at least I really knew that it was the hardest thing for bodybuilders, a lot of them, is that posing is, for a lot of them, the hardest thing. I mean, it's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver where you can be a great driver. You can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser. You can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Oh, posing is rough, and it always every time you're, leaning out, it changes throughout the entire prep, so you think you've got it down, and then it changes, and even just this last, competition at North Americans, um, I work with Kenny Wallach, he's amazing, he's the best, but we changed my front double bicep pose the night before, and I practiced and practiced it, and I still screwed it up on stage.
How'd you change it?
So throughout the prep, I was like turning my waist to the side. So my up, it was
Hey, hang
weird
on,
because
everyone. Let's see the guns here. Hang on, everyone. Let's see the guns. That's just absolutely ridiculous, everyone. That's just insane. We all need to go and train arms after this. But so you were originally turned and then you just changed it.
so I was like turned, my upper body was this way, but my waist was to the side. But my waist, I mean, you get a little chunky in your off season, so but it leaned out throughout my prep, of course. And so then he's like, "Oh, you look way leaner, so let's face you to the front." And then I was supposed to like lean onto my left hip, and I didn't do that on stage, and it just looks awful. I mean, not horrible, but it just doesn't.
For a guy that's as good as Kenny, he should know that with the prep brain that you guys are in and everything like that, you're not going to remember something that you learned
I know,
the
right?
night before. It's like, come on, but no, Kenny is by far I mean, we've had so many guests on the podcast that are posing coached by him, and he is by far, yeah, one of the best, if not the best in the country for bodybuilding. So if anyone's looking for someone to help them, definitely go to him. But out of your poses that you have to do, what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite pose to do?
My least favorite pose is just the regular back pose, just standing backwards. I hate that pose. I feel like it's never right, and I feel like I never look right. My favorite pose is probably tricep pose and front double by.
Which is funny because if I ever competed, I would just say my back pose is my favorite. Not because of my back, but it's because that's the one pose where I can let my smile down, where I can kind of just be like, oh, okay. I can
And
relax a
blow
little
the
bit.
air out of your stomach so you're
Yeah.
not holding it in.
Yeah. Which, I mean, another thing that people don't get is that for a lot of these competitors, your jaw muscle is the most sore thing after the show because of all the smiling that you have to do. And
Yeah.
it's just, it's insane. But one thing with posing too, that not that many people realize is that for, 99% of these competitors, you're more sore from your posing sessions than you are from your working out, just because the body is not meant to be in that flexed of a state for that long of a period of time. How long into your career did you feel before you really sort of developed that strength to be able to flex for that amount of time? Because if you were to take the general public and go put them on stage, some of them would last like maybe 10, 15 seconds at best in a flex state. But you guys are sometimes have to do it for minutes on minutes.
Yeah, it's taken me probably a year and a half to feel like I can hold it, really well. So, yeah.
Have you had any of those torturous judges that just decide, hey, we're going to have everyone go on there for like 5 minutes, like some of the guests that I've had? Yeah.
That drives me nuts. I'm like,
Yeah, we can't decide. Everyone just go through it all again. Yeah, just go through it all again. Yeah. Oh,
or they'll have you hold
yeah,
your front
yeah,
pose for like 5 minutes.
yeah.
You're just standing there.
Just hold it there. I'm gonna get a coffee break, go and take a piss or something like that, and then hey,
Yeah.
but just make sure you're like that when I get back. Don't move a muscle, stuff. Yeah. But that's that is ridiculous. I mean, out of all the things that bodybuilders have to go through, that's one of the biggest ones as well. But as you can tell, I am one of the whitest people you will ever meet in your entire life. My thick Norwegian skin and being in the upper Midwest, where I mean, if I were to walk out outside in the sun, I either get burnt to an absolute crisp, or I get farmer's tan. Where let's be honest, that is not a real tan. But with bodybuilders, I find so fascinating is that you get to have a tan, even if it's only for a couple of days. And even if it's a sprayed on, or not that many people still do like the old school tan. But what is that feeling like for you when you get that tan on? Because we hear so many stories of people who you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that feeling like when you get that last layer on and you just look in the mirror and say, oh my God, I look like a completely different person?
for me, it's just like the finishing touch. Like, oh, now I'm here. I'm ready to go. Like, I love the smell. It's
You're
just,
the one person
I
that
don't
said they
know.
love the smell.
Yeah. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but it's just when I smell it, I'm like, oh, this is it. I'm gonna go
I'm
on
just gonna
stage.
clarify. She likes the smell of the tan. She doesn't like the smell of backstage because people don't realize backstage you can't really put on any deodorant on. So I always tell people don't go backstage if you're ever at these shows. You'll thank me later. So I'm just gonna clarify that she doesn't like the smell of people's bo. She likes the smell of the tan.
Yeah. Yes. Backstage is not so pleasant.
Yeah, but it's just. But another thing too. I mean, you basically just have to come like a human statue. You can't really sit on anything. You can't lean up against anything. It's another one of the things I always say. If there's like a checklist of the things that bodybuilders have to go through, I mean, that's another one of them where it's like, don't these people go through enough already? But when you're walking on that stage, what is that feeling like for you, knowing that you put months upon months of hard work into this prep, and that now you're finally able to show it off? What's that feeling like for you when you walk on that stage?
Honestly, I still get a little bit of stage fright, but that's getting better. Um, but it's like it's something I can't really explain. I don't even know how to explain how I feel, honestly. It's excitement. You get like an adrenaline rush. Um, I can't really, like, you're on top of the world.
Well, I like to compare it sort of to like whenever I'd go out on the mound to pitch in like a very big game in high school or something like. I mean, I've had times where I was walking out to that mound in like the state tournament, and my legs were just shaking. Even walking out to the mound, I was like, "Don't show it to anyone." But then as soon as I totally understand that fear, and also just like still being, but it's just I wouldn't trade that feeling for anything else in the world. So that's great that you're able to still have that. But now we go to a question that I bet you've heard before, but you've actually probably been able to experience it the last week and a half. What is your go-to post-show meal?
Um, it changes every time. But I always have to have cookies because cookies are just I love cookies. And they have to be like ooey gooey, thick, like fresh baked kind of out of the oven cookies. So I will search high and low for the best cookies I can possibly find. But usually it's just like a burger and fries. Like I really want, and then of course a drink of some kind. Like this last time I had a spiked milkshake. So yeah,
So when you say spiked, what did they put in the milkshake?
it was caramel vodka.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
I
pretty
am
good.
yeah, I'm a fan of the hard stuff when it comes to drinking. I'm one of those people where, my friends are always like, "Oh, just have a couple of beers." And I was like, "Why? I'd rather just have like two or three shots right in front of each other just because it gets you feeling fine really quickly." But yeah, that sounds interesting. Where'd you get it at? Is there any place? Is it like a chain restaurant or something that I could get it?
It was at Burgatory in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh.
I gotta
Burgatory.
look
It
that up
was
and see if there's
good.
anything near me that's like that because that sounds like something that I would immensely, immensely enjoy. But now we get to the big part of the podcast, or actually before that, I jumped ahead of myself a little bit there. See, that's the one error that I do every podcast. I did that right there. But another myth and stereotype that I love to bust, and this is one that I think a lot of people in the general public suffer from as well, is that so many people look at that package that you guys put on stage and they just assume that you're able to keep that look 24/7. I mean, so many people don't understand that. I know. See, we get that reaction every time too, and I find that ridiculous as well. But I think one of the reasons behind that is that people watch shows like Biggest Loser, where people go on show and they lose, like 200 pounds, and they're able to keep it off. And then some people look at the Bibos and they're just like, oh, they work even harder than those people. They should be able to keep that weight that they have, just because people just assume that it's a weight loss journey when they don't realize you're just cutting down basically from. And when you manipulate your water and everything that goes into the sport, I mean, you're not going to be able to maintain it. But what was that like for you when you first realized that, hey, this look that I'm, cultivated for so many months and worked my butt off for, I'm not going to be able to maintain it? And has that gotten easier to accept as your career has gone on?
Not really, honestly. I mean, there's another, it's body dysmorphia again. Like you feel like you're just huge when you're not. But
You're
I mean,
you're
we
huge in
have
a
to
you're
add,
huge you're huge in a good way. Let's be honest.
yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah. But I mean, we all put on body fat. I mean, you know, get a little bit of cellulite in my off season, or I shouldn't call it off season. It's really improvement season. We have to put on muscle. And the only way to do it is to add in calories. You have to go into a surplus. I wish I could be super lean all the time because you get into that, you get lean like that, and it's hard to see yourself put on weight. So it's best to just throw on a hoodie, some, pants, and not look at yourself. Just focus on the muscle, and that's it. Just don't even, you know.
Why do you think I love Minnesota so much? Because 8 months out of the year is sweater weather, basically.
There you
I
go.
mean, you only have to
It's
show
that
off
way
in
here
summer.
too.
Yeah, you only have to show off in summer, basically. And then as soon as it hits October, sweater time. Sweater time until
Yep.
basically April or May, really. And then you're in the clear. So, that's one of the few benefits of living here, I guess. But obviously the big elephant in the room is the coronavirus, because it's something that's impacted our lives so much more than I ever would have thought. I mean, I always ask every guest at the end of the podcast, and I'll ask you the same thing, where would you like to be at a year from today? But if I would have asked that a year ago and someone said we're going to be in the midst of a global pandemic and all the stuff's going to change, I would have bet my entire life savings against that person. So shows how much hindsight I have. But how has this pandemic affected you? And I mean, especially with bodybuilding. I mean, the gyms were shut down for a significant part of time, across the country. How has it impacted you, and how are you able to still stay in shape during this? Because it was so much uncertainty and a lot of people just didn't know what to do.
It's been really hard. I didn't let it affect me too much. I worked out at home, but I didn't have a gym. I had one resistance band and a set of 10-pound dumbbells. And I kept trying to order online, and I kept going to Walmart, and they were all sold out. So I had to train super hard because I was trying to put on muscle at the same time I was trying to, I was trying to do like a lean gain because I was prepping. I was originally prepping for USA's in July, and of course that got moved. Um, so but I still managed to put on 8 pounds of muscle. But I think to myself, how much more could I have put on if I had the gym? But I'm grateful I was able to do that. But it affected my job too. I mean, I like to train in person. That's what I do. I train a little bit online, but most of my clientele is in person, and of course, I couldn't do that anymore. And in Nevada, I was trying to claim unemployment for that time, and the system was down or whatever, and I never did get that. So trying to survive, you know, just and bodybuilding is an expensive sport. I mean, if anybody knew how much I spent on it, it would blow their mind. So
Again, one of the myths that I love to bust too is that this sport, you are not going to make money doing, unless you are like the number one bodybuilder for men or women. You're not going to make really any money. You might make a couple of $1,000s, but people just assume that like, oh, this could be a sport that you could just live off of and you could just be a bodybuilder. There's like a handful of them that are able to live off of the bodybuilding, that if they're like the top sport, but everyone else has a job. It's unlike any other sport where, I mean, you can't depend on this financially, which is another thing that I always say really makes me respect bodybuilding even more, because it's like, God, are these people psycho? They kill themselves in the gym basically, and then they pay for it. I mean, I always said, I always said if I could invent a job where I could get people to do all the labor and then they'd pay me for even having them do all the job, I mean, I would be set for life. But that's one thing that's so unique about the sport of bodybuilding. But so how are you able to put on 8 pounds of muscle with only 10 pounds of weights, 10 pounds of dumbbells and resistance bands? Were you just doing like 5-hour workouts then?
I don't even know. I mean, I was some of that time I was in the gym before that started, but only about a couple of months, obviously. And then the gym closed, of course, and I just would eat post workout, and I did train really intensely, a lot of isolation holds and negatives, and I don't know, I wasn't doing any cardio or anything like that. So, um,
I was gonna say you probably had to do like 1,000 push-ups a day and 1,000 pull-ups a day, basically. Then, because we
yeah,
had
it really was.
yeah, we had some people that just did that. They just did sit-ups, pull-ups, and push-ups. Like they did like a couple hundred of them every day, and then that actually worked out fine for them. But yeah, because I mean, with resistance bands for me, the only thing that they do is they get me veiny. They don't really add on anything for me. So as I was like, the moment you said you just had resistance bands and dumbbells, I was like, okay, what's going on? But again, you could always just use your kid as a weight too. I mean, that's one of the positive things about having kids, is that hey, if it comes into a pinch. But yeah, that's incredible. But you were talking before about how you didn't do as much cardio for your first prep, and I'm one of those people where you say cardio for me, my legs are already starting to shake because that's my number one thing that I hate more than anything else. I mean, with this pandemic, I have done more cardio, but when I say cardio, I mean walking on the treadmill for 100 minutes basically and getting 8-9 miles just because I have nothing to do. And the only way I'm able to accomplish that is by having movies play because, without movies, there's no way in hell that you would get me on that treadmill. But the problem is that I haven't done that for 2 weeks because I've run out of movies to watch. I did it for like 50 days and then I ran out of all the movies that I wanted to watch. So I really have no motivation now to do it. But what is your relationship with cardio like before the pandemic? Because like you said, you didn't do anything during it, but how's it evolved from your first prep?
My first prep, I hated cardio, and I would do the same thing. I would watch movies or whatever, but this prep, I learned a few things from Danny Reardon. Actually, I don't know if you, I'm sure
Oh,
you know who that is.
absolutely.
Little
She's a
Monster.
she's a huge legend in the sport.
Yes,
Yeah.
I took a course from her called Conscious Champions, and it was, she kind of talked about cardio and changed my whole mindset on preps, and it helped so much. So instead of watching movies, I would get on that stair stepper and listen to like really upbeat music stuff I would never listen to in my entire life because I don't like techno-y stuff, but I would listen to that and somehow it would make me go faster on the step mill. So I'd turn that on and I'd just go as hard as I can. And I had, by the end of this last prep, I had 2 hours of cardio a day and I just was rocking it. I had to.
Well, and Danny Reardon, I actually have a fun story about her that I'll share with you after the podcast. But yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, everyone go and give her a follow as well because that's just a lot of great stuff. But were there any food shortages during the pandemic in your neck of the woods? Because all throughout the country we had like meat shortages and stuff. What was that like?
Oh my gosh, it was awful. There was no meat, there was no, and it was like there was like no processed food, which I didn't care about. But then pretty soon, and I was making jokes about it because I was like, oh yeah, all the processed food's gone, but still we have meat and vegetables, so I'm good. And then pretty soon everything started to disappear. And so, but luckily I have family around and we were all taking care of each other. So we were like, does everybody have toilet paper? And my aunt would go to the store and they're elderly, so they've set up a program here where the elderly could go at like 6 o'clock on certain days and they would give them the first, truck or whatever of food that came in. So they'd get like, so my aunt would be like, do you need chicken? Or so they were taking care of me.
No, and I got so lucky. So one of my neighbors, I mean, I live in the suburbs, but one of my neighbors is a huge deer hunter. So he had literally like 2,000 pounds of venison. Basically, he has like 3 freezers in his backyard of it. So we would just go over there if we ever need anything. He's like, "Oh, you need something?" He just tossed me a couple patties of deer venison, and he's like, "Oh, here you go." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's." So I lucked out a lot with that. But I mean, yeah, this has just been such an uncertain time. But how have you dealt with all this mentally too? Because I know bodybuilding is such a mental sport, but just this whole uncertainty as well. And I mean, one thing that I think might be positive for bodybuilders about this pandemic is that bodybuilding is it's a selfish sport. I mean, let's be totally honest. I mean, you're by yourself a lot and you ignore a lot of other people because you just don't have the time for them. But do you find that this pandemic actually made things easier for you to sort of just be in your own zone because you didn't have to worry about the social obligations that you might have had to without the pandemic?
In some ways, yes. But it also made me appreciate things a little bit more. So, I got to where I didn't even want to go to the gym because partly because, sometimes people would interrupt me during my workouts and I was like, just leave me alone. I don't feel good. I mean, most of the time I'm totally cool with people talking to me, but in preps, don't, I just don't feel good. I don't want to talk to people. But now this made me appreciate it more and I realized how much I needed human connection. So I really appreciate things a lot more now. And I appreciate the gym a lot more.
Oh, I mean, just even taking walks in parks with people or just doing that, it's like it made me appreciate so much of the little things that like if we were to look at pre-pandemic, we wouldn't think of it all. I mean, even just going out and oh my God, I mean, I missed a prime year of my life basically when it came to going out and going to bars and stuff like that. So, that's, but I mean, just, yeah, just, so how is your, so do you have a daughter or a son?
I have two
Two
sons.
sons. So how have your sons been dealing with this whole pandemic too? Because for the younger kids, I feel really bad for them.
Yeah, my older son, he actually owns a body shop in Boise, Idaho, but it was rough for him too because he had to close down, for a little while, not too long, but for a little while. So just making ends meet for him was rough. But my younger son, it was hard on because at first he was like, "Yay, no school," and then pretty soon, within a month, he was like,
How
"Okay, I'm ready
what
to go
grade is he
back."
in?
He this year he started high school,
Oh,
and they're doing it all online so far. They're hoping that they can get him back like at the end of the quarter or something, but who knows?
I could not imagine, especially in middle school. Then before that would have been a nightmare because everyone that doesn't remember how much your social life was really basically your entire existence back when you were that age. So imagine, I mean, yeah, and we've had stories of people that have had like seniors in high school. That would be the worst, like missing prom and everything. And then I've had friends. I had friends of mine that were like Division 1 athletes that were going to be, but then they missed their entire senior season for baseball. So, but then they still got. But it's just so much stuff that was missed that I feel. And I've had friends that are teachers too that are just it's a whole cluster that people just don't get. But yeah, that's just yeah. I hope that it doesn't affect the young kids as much as I think it might. Just mentally, just having this all time alone. But hopefully, yeah, it definitely gets solved. But one question that I love to ask people that have kids on this podcast is that I mean, like being a mom, how important is it for you to maintain this image for your sons just so that they can see like, hey, I can be healthy and in shape at any age, and no matter what, I can always live a healthy and fit lifestyle. How important is it for you to sort of show that and be that example for your sons that like, hey, you can do this?
Um, it's really important. I want my kids to know that you can do anything you put your mind to, and I want them to have that mindset for themselves because they'll mirror everything. You know, they're sponges. So I just want them to see that, and you can do anything at any age. So hopefully, when I'm 60, 70 years old, I'll still be doing this, or something to do with it. Whatever, I may change my mind. I don't know what I'm going to do at that age, but I still want to be fit and healthy. So
Hey, we've had 6 60-year-old female bodybuilders on this podcast, so it does happen. But I do feel bad for your youngest son though, because he's at that age where kids taunt everyone mercilessly if there's anything different about him. So does he ever come home and say like, "Oh, everyone's just talking to me, dude, your mom's jacked" and stuff like that, or does he deal with any of that stuff from friends? Yep.
a little bit, yeah. They'll be like, my older son used to always get it, like your mom's hot or whatever, and they'd want to come over. My younger son doesn't talk about it that much, but he has mentioned it a couple of times, but his friends are like, your mom's jacked or whatever. So,
I just remember
but
that
we
age.
don't
Yeah.
care. We're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm cool. So
Yeah,
whatever.
no, yeah. I just remember that age where literally anything that was different about anyone, is a thing that they like to talk about. But one thing that I love to ask is, I mean, especially if you walked out in public dressed the way that you are right now, I mean, it's like you are not the average looking woman where you are going to get stares just because it's human nature just to be fascinated by stuff that's not of the norm. I mean, whenever I always like to compare female bodybuilders to sort of like mini celebrities when they walk out just because they draw the attention of, so many people. But what has that experience been like for you, sort of, realizing that, hey, if I walk out in public and stuff, I'm going to draw a lot of people's attention. And what's that been like as your career's gone on, just sort of accepting that, or what's that experience been like?
Yeah, I just accept it, and I honestly take it as a compliment. I don't know what they're thinking. I'm sure some people are like, "Oh, that's gross," and some people are fascinated by it. Some people think it's great, and I do get a lot of compliments. A lot of people will come up and say, "Wow, you look great." It takes a lot of discipline to do what you do, but I take it as a compliment because I work really hard. So bad or good, I mean, I work for this.
No, absolutely. And it just goes to show that, you never know what reaction you're going to get. But I have found that it has gotten so much better from some of the guests that I had on like 20, 30 years ago that, where they really, dealt with stuff. But so that's a positive thing. So I really do think things are getting better. And, yeah. And plus, if I looked at, trust me, you kidding me? I'd be walking down the street naked basically every day and I'd just be showing off to everyone. If I look like that, dude, I cannot, like, I would be walking through doors, just going like this, just, yeah, it would. There's a certain type of people that you're glad aren't into bodybuilding because they would just be merciless about it. I just be the entire time. Yeah, I would rub it in so many people's face. So that's a positive thing, I guess. But one body part that I talked about a lot on well, I did a question, I should say, before New Year's Eve. I asked a question to all the audience, said, "What's one body part that people are looking forward to growing the most, during during the new year?" And the answers were arms, legs, back, abs, shoulders, hamstrings, quads, and arms won by like 10%. So I always got to ask the guests, what does an arm day look like for you? Because we've seen your pipes and they are impressive. So what does an arm day look like for you in the gym?
I don't do anything special. I work my biceps when I do back, and I usually just do like a barbell and lift like some volume. So, like 8 sets of 8 reps with like 45-second rest in between, and that's it. I don't do anything special.
This is ridiculous, but no, no, that's an answer that we hear a lot too, because like a lot of especially guys don't understand that buys are somewhat of an accessory exercise for a lot of things, so you don't really need to train them as much. So yeah, it's just that's another thing that I just people just don't get, but they really should. But also one thing that I think with especially with this pandemic is that being a personal trainer, you hear this a lot too, is that one of the biggest excuses that people give is, oh, I'd love to get in shape, I just don't have the time. I just I don't have the time. But with this pandemic, if you use that excuse, I mean, I don't know what's going on in your life that you're able to give that excuse, but with so many people that they have all the free time in the world now, but what advice would you have for someone that's coming up to you and just saying, like, hey, I really just want to get in shape, but I just don't know how? Because I feel that that's something that a lot of people suffer with, where they have the motivation, they just don't have the tools on how to accomplish it. But what advice would you give someone, especially in this time now, that's saying, like, hey, I really just want to get in shape, but I don't know how to start?
That's a hard one. I guess. I guess it's kind of easy to me, but I mean, just start. Go for a walk,
Yes.
start there. Baby steps, go for a walk, maybe go for a bike ride. Start taking something out of your diet. Like if you drink soda, that's horrible, and if you want soda that bad, drink a Coke Zero or a diet soda. It's not going to kill you. Everybody's like, oh, that's so bad for you, but then they're drinking like regular soda like it's so much better because it has real sugar supposedly. But come on. You could start there. Hire a trainer.
Oh yeah, that too. I mean, if you don't have the knowledge, I was lucky that through high school and through being in sports, I got enough knowledge from our strength coaches, like how to do nice workouts. But yeah, if you don't have that knowledge, I mean, I would have definitely went to a trainer if I didn't have that. So everyone, and walking too, like you said, that's one of the best ways to lose weight, regardless of what shape you're in. And it's just get started with that. It's just so it's simple, but and if anyone needs any help, I'm sure they can look you up and contact you if they need anything. And I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. But yeah, it's just yeah, it's with every but again, one of the problems that people don't realize that every individual is different. I mean, when it comes to what's going to help you lose weight, I mean, you're just going to really have to find out through yourself. But yeah, if we were to talk to so now the $1 million question, if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved if we were to talk to you a year from today?
I'm hoping I'll have my pro card for one thing. I'm going to try out some women's bodybuilding in my next national show, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
You definitely got the size for it. But so we know you're a week and a half post show. So do you have any other shows in mind before the end of the season, or?
Nope, I'm going to improve until nationals next year, whenever that happens, probably USA's and hopefully in Vegas because it's closer to me. But whatever. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to put on more muscle and always improve.
So the one tough question that I always love to ask everyone at the end is, if you could change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, what would it be?
Oh, that's a hard one.
I save it for the end.
Okay, what would I change about bodybuilding? Hmm.
I can give you my answer first while you're thinking. One well, it's actually kind of like two. One of them is obviously the prize money, where it's like make this more of a sport where like people could actually, live off of it instead of, cuz like living this lifestyle and having a job is almost impossible. I mean, people do it, but it's horrible. I mean, if you really want to get serious in this sport, you should be able to financially just be able to, just focus on this, cuz focusing on this lifestyle in and of itself is hard enough. as it is, but also just to have a fair, more parity in the judging, where if you were to compete in shows in back-to-back weekends, one show they might want you a little bit more leaner, the next show, the next week they might want you a little bit more, full. It's hard to, find out what exactly the judges want, because it's always up to human error, which, being a pitcher in baseball, trust me, and dealing with some umpires, trust me, I know all about human error. But those are my two that I hear of all the time, and I totally agree with.
I actually can agree with you there, with the judging, especially because, I mean, just for instance, at North Americans, I competed in two classes and I placed fourth um, in my class, which was Masters 40 and over. Um, and the girl that got second in that class, when we competed together in open class, I got sixth and she got seventh. So I was like, how is that? How you'd think she would have placed better than me in that one also. I mean, and I'm fine with it. I don't care, but I just didn't understand that, like, the judging seemed a little bit skewed and that, you know what I mean? So I could see that. But I'm cool with whatever. I mean, I was just happy to be there. But yeah, prize money would be good too, actually, a little bit. Like, even if you win and get maybe your registration fee back would be cool. Something like that, you know?
Yeah, and again, yeah, there's so many things that I think could be improved, but it's just nice to start with the simple stuff. But lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
There's a lot of people I would like to give
Go
shout
ahead.
outs to, but okay. My coach, Shelby Starnes, he's amazing. He's the best. Of course, Kenny Wallach, um, posing coach. Danny Reardon again, because she's amazing. My boyfriend, because he put up with me through my prep and he helped me a lot.
The
My
unsung the
family.
unsung heroes of this podcast are the significant others of the bodybuilders, I really think. Those are
Yes,
the unsung
absolutely.
heroes, yeah. Yeah, yep.
Our hormones are completely out of whack
Yep.
and we get mean. I'm just telling you, we are not easy to live with.
And there's a difference
Um,
between a regular girlfriend that's a little bit hormonally imbalanced and a bodybuilder, because you're gonna have to deal with a lot more stuff. You're gonna actually have to maybe, like, actually, like, have to, like, grab her and just hold her down a little bit, because when she's that big, she's not like a little girl where you can kind of, so yeah, it becomes a lot more of
yeah.
a physical job, yeah.
Yeah. And one more person, Pat Goslin. She's been a great friend to me and a huge mentor. So, yeah.
And that's awesome. And I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. And I'll especially leave a link to Wendy's Instagram and all the other things where you can get a hold of her. And everyone, go and give her a follow. And I always say, buyer beware. You will be inspired to get off that couch and stop eating those Twinkies and, get in shape. But again, Wendy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I couldn't think of a better way to end this. Can you give us another front double buy, and everyone, we can just be... Okay, that's just ridiculous. Here, pump that up a little bit. Pump that up a little bit. Let's see the... Jeez. All right. Yeah, we all need to go to the gym and just train arms immediately. This is just absolutely insane. But again, you guys, Wendy, thank you so much for coming on. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.